Having answered the fundamental problem of existence by saying that in fact you are not subject to death at all, neither you nor anybody else is subject to death if you place your eye at the right place where it deserves to be put. If you put it in the body, the suffering is something which is inevitable. If you put your eye in the right place in the conscious being, which is the cause of the whole universe, then there is no question of any sorrow or being sad for I. If that is the case, there is a possibility that you will use this argument by saying that, oh, I am not subject to death, I am not subject to any destruction, I am not subject to any sorrow. So you can indiscriminately do anything. In fact, I can shoot you and I can say, anyway, I doesn't die and therefore this body anyway goes away, so what have I done? So only looking at the problem at the fundamental level without looking at the situational level can create a huge gap in one's thinking. And in fact, it can lead to a lot of misuse of the knowledge. Therefore, this knowledge of I and the ultimate I has to be seen from the standpoint of how does it help me to live my life better and what decisions that I can make in my life right now which are appropriate. If I don't make that link, I can get into a huge problem of justifying any action and saying that anyway, ultimately there is only one reality which never undergoes any change, and that's the final reality. In order to bring balance to that kind of a knowledge along with how one is meant to apply this knowledge in day-to-day living, this is the verse which makes that connection. Okay. So the next verse goes, Esha te bhita sankhye buddhi yoge tvimam shrunu buddha yukto yayav partha karma bandham prahasyasi. The knowledge of I being limitless, even though it may be a fact, remains quite remote for most of the people. It is not easy to understand that you are the truth of the universe in spite of being told so clearly. Because the way I have been living my life is so far removed from what the reality of myself is. If we look at all our lives, the life is lived thinking that I am a small individual. But not only that, in the process I have acquired so many different complexes. Complexes about myself, my sense of, let's say, inferiority, sometimes superiority which is hiding my sense of inferiority, my feeling of the fact that the world is inimical to me, the world doesn't let me do things that I would like to do, or given set of individuals are not conducive to me, I have been victim of their misbehavior, or you find yourself wanting in terms of what the world should be, or what a nation should be, or what a culture should be, or what a society should be. So in fact, if I look at my dissatisfaction, I can see that I am dissatisfied about so many things. And if this is the way I am living my life, and one decision, and if I make based on certain beliefs, it gets reinforced by series of actions. And if this is the framework within which I am living my life, then the fact that all that is here is me is too far for me. Because where I am operating from, the set of beliefs that I have is too far from what I need to understand. So I need to bridge this gap. I need to be more and more in touch with what is and not live from the standpoint of my set of belief. I have to be ready to re-examine and re-look at each of this, revisit each of these beliefs, correct them, and only then I can come closer to understanding this reality, which happens to be too big otherwise. Okay. So this is exactly the process, and this is where he says, up to now, Lord Krishna says, I have been talking to you about Sankhya. Sankhya is the knowledge about what is. What is doesn't depend upon you at all, whether you think or you don't think. For generations we believed that the earth was flat, but that did not change the fact that the earth was globe. Now, if you believe your little individual, it's not going to change the fact that you are this limitless I. But in order for you to understand that reality, you need to prepare yourself. And this is where Lord Krishna says that up to now I have been talking about Sankhya, but now I'm going to be talking about yoga. Yoga in the sense of how does one live one's life? How does one respond to every situation, including Arjuna's situation at that given point in time? How he had to respond to that situation. Okay. And he says, Buddhya yukto yayav partha, once you begin to put your situations in perspective, then karma bandham prahasyasi, you can get rid of the bondage, which is the ignorance and ignorance based conclusion. In this particular situation, a yoga would mean that if Arjuna was to reassess the situation that he was in, he would say the following. He would say that yes, I am not going to be fighting for my personal revenge, for my personal ambition, but there is a larger picture, and that is that a king who is in place has come into his place by being unfair. And that person who is basically a greedy person, and the person who does not hesitate to do wrong to others just for his own power and pleasures, is a king not very good for subjects as a whole. And Arjuna is put in a position where he is born as a Kshatriya, he is born as a warrior, and also he was the one and his own brothers who deserved the kingdom, because righteously they were the ones who actually had to be the king. So if that was the case, it became a matter of principle for him to fight. The fighting was not meant for himself, but the fighting was meant for looking at the larger picture of how many people would suffer if a person who is insensitive, who is just thinking about his power, is left to live the kingdom. If that is the case, and if he is placed in the position where he can fight and he can put that king out, then that was his duty. Once you begin to re-look at the situation in a proper perspective, taking into consideration a much larger picture, then you are becoming a person who is more and more objective. You are making the decisions which are appropriate. They are not just based on what you like or what you don't like. It is based on higher goals. And that is the person that you need to become in order to deserve this knowledge about you being limitless. And each one of us has to grow to the point to learn to make decisions, not only from our own personal desires, from our own little view of the world, but more responsible decisions, more taking into consideration the repercussions of our action on greater forces, also looking at our own position in scheme of things and what is an appropriate response on our side, looking at ethics, looking at appropriateness. These are all the different considerations that you need to put into practice before you make decisions, unlike now when we are looking and we are making decisions from a very narrow perspective. So this is the shift in knowledge, in the teaching, from just the knowledge of what is to how can I become the person who is deserving of this knowledge. This person has to grow in maturity and grow in terms of one's vision of the world, has to reorient, revise one's understanding in day-to-day situations, in how you look at things and how you make decisions. Unless you do that, the gap between where you're operating and what you have to understand remains too large and it cannot be filled. And this is the connecting verse which connects this knowledge with your own personal growth and maturity.